All right, we're opening a case file. This isn't just any location. It's a 512-acre property in Utah that our source material argues might just be the most important and most dangerous piece of real estate on the entire planet. So, welcome to our field report on Skinwalker Ranch. Now, I want you to forget everything you've seen on TV. Forget the ghost stories. The document we're breaking down today asks a much more radical and, frankly, a much more terrifying question. What if the bizarre events at the ranch aren't supernatural at all? What if they're technological? And this is the heart of it. The core thesis here is that Skinwalker Ranch isn't haunted. It's a wound, a literal tear in the fabric of reality, a place where the membrane separating our world from another, much more hostile dimension has worn dangerously thin. So to really get what's going on, we first have to define the battlefield. Because according to our source, this isn't just a piece of land. It's a very specific and very volatile kind of dimensional territory. The source uses a term from ancient Egypt, the Duat. But they didn't see it as a myth. They saw it as a technical description of a kind of chaotic buffer zone between different realities. And the argument here is that Skinwalker Ranch is a modern, physical, and actively bleeding example of the Duat breaking through into our world. And this is nothing new. Just look at the timeline. It shows this clear progression from ancient tribal warnings about a cursed path to a privately funded, high-tech scientific investigation, and then boom, it escalates to a secret Pentagon black budget program. This place has become a matter of national security. Okay, let's get to our first piece of hard evidence, Exhibit A. According to the source, this wound in reality isn't just sitting there wide open. It has a key, a very specific key that seems to unlock it. And get this, that key is a number. The advanced scientific teams on the ranch, with all their sophisticated gear, repeatedly logged these powerful, localized electromagnetic spikes, and they were always centered right around 110 hertz. This was absolutely not random background noise. The source argues this frequency is basically the resonant password for the portal. It's a signal that either shows up when the veil between worlds thins, or it's the frequency the entities over there are using to create a stable gateway to operate through. The researchers on the ground logged this very distinct sequence over and over. First, some high strangeness event happens. A UAP appears out of nowhere, or a shadow figure is seen, and then immediately, the sensors go wild with a powerful energy burst right at 110 hertz. The two things are directly connected. Now, for our next piece of evidence, Exhibit B. And this gets into what the source says is maybe the most terrifying aspect of this entire phenomenon. It doesn't always stay on the ranch. It follows you home. They call it the Hitchhiker Effect, and it's been meticulously documented. The intelligence at the ranch is described not as some physical creature, but as a parasitic, non-local consciousness. It can literally infect and influence people, basically treating human beings as vehicles to get off the property. And the consequences for the people involved are severe. We're talking researchers reporting full-on poltergeist activity and seeing apparitions in their own homes, sometimes thousands of miles away. This is critical because it proves the intelligence isn't tied to the land. It's non-local, it's infectious, and it can use human consciousness as a way to spread. Okay, on to Exhibit C. What kind of activity is actually patrolling this dimensional wound? The source doesn't just talk about random sightings. It identifies specific classes of UAPs and treats them like functional pieces of hardware. On one hand, you have these intelligent orbs of plasma. They're described as either probes or maybe even the disembodied consciousness, the actual soul packets of entities coming through. But then, on the other hand, you have the big guns, the massive, totally silent triangles, seen as advanced patrol craft of some higher power fighting over this strategic dimensional airspace. So that begs the question, right? What about the actual skinwalkers the place is named for? Well, according to this analysis, they have a very specific strategic job. They're the psychological enforcers. These terrifying apparitions, the giant wolves, the things that shouldn't exist, are designed to generate such overwhelming primal fear that they scare off any serious investigation. They're the guard dogs of the portal. So let's connect all these pieces. We have the dimensional wound, the frequency key, this parasitic contagion, and all this machinery. Let's put it all together to form the final indictment that's presented in the source material. The source calls Skinwalker Ranch the Rosetta Stone for the UAP phenomenon for a reason. It's because it provides the terrifying why behind the what. It argues that UAPs are fundamentally linked to a non-human, parasitic, and totally hostile interdimensional intelligence. And once you look at it through that lens, all the weird events on the ranch, they stop being random, spooky encounters. They actually start to make a coherent, terrifying kind of sense. These aren't just happenings. They're tactics. The apparitions, the UAPs, the Hitchhiker Effect, every single one is a deliberate action in a hidden conflict. And with that understanding, the whole narrative just shifts. The ranch is no longer some unsolvable enigma. It becomes an observable frontline. Which brings us to the final, stark conclusion from this analysis. Skinwalker Ranch is a critical, strategic gateway. It's a beachhead in an interdimensional war that has been secretly raging for millennia. It is an active battlefield. And this isn't ancient history. The source concludes this war is happening right now, on our own planet, and the data coming out of Skinwalker Ranch is the primary intelligence brief. Which leaves all of us with one final, deeply unsettling question to think about. Who is winning?